with this topic, because of the nature of its relation to meaning of life, if you will, you know, you ran into a problem in the Pentagon that, I mean, you described it as like mind-blowing to you that this would ever happen, and it's mind-blowing to me too, which is like with the quote-unquote Collins elite. So you, at some point within ATIP, growing as a hub within there, you started to run into people where you didn't, the way you described it in your book is that you didn't necessarily know who they were. They almost operated silently, where there was a large contingent in this 22,000 person fucking place, the Pentagon, that had their biblical beliefs dictate how they wanted to handle something like this, which was really in a lot of ways to say, don't handle it. And I believe there was one guy who you had previously respected who at some point,
and still respect, by the way. I still respect that person.
Okay, so he pulled you aside at one point and said, Lue, you're getting into demonic shit here. Have you read your Bible lately? And you're looking at him as an intel guy whose job is national security going, I'm sorry, my Bible?
Right.
Like, do you understand why at home this seems wild to someone like me or a lot of people listening that, like, a religious belief is going to...
Oh, brother, don't look now, but when's the last time you pulled $1 out of your pocket? What's it saying there? In God we trust.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I hate to break it to you, but you know, a lot of our country was based on certain moral principles and even religious values. That's a fact. You know, there's a reason why we have a national cathedral, right, and things like that. That's not a bad thing. You know, this country it's okay to have faith in this country. In fact, I am a man of faith. I don't wear my religion on my sleeve, and I'm very personal about it. But people know when you read my book, I was raised Jewish. That's the way I was raised. I went to Hebrew school and wore yarmulke, and on my father's side they were Catholic. So my mother's side, she chose to raise me Jewish. I don't have a problem with faith. In fact, I think faith is important. It gets people through a lot of things. What I have a problem with is when people overlay their faith on a national level security issue. Now, is it that strange that happens? No, we have national prayers all the time that our presidents lead, right? So faith is important in our country, and I'm not blaming anybody if they believe that these things are demonic or they're anti-Christian. And by the way, I don't want to villainize the Christians either because it's not a Christian issue.
Yeah, neither am I, by the way.
Yeah. No, I got it. But I guess I want to make clear that, look, extremism, by any other word, is still extremism. Whether it's Muslim extremism, Christian extremism, Judaism extremism is extremism. We can all agree on that. And that's my concern. It's when people that are in the government are exercising their views in a way that's unilateral without allowing other people to be part of that conversation. That is a problem for me. Now, I believe faith is great to have, and if it's a moral compass for you, fantastic. But I don't think that we have the right to impose our religious views in a decision process over other people who may not share that. Look, I often try to explain to people there's really two types of truths in the world. Because people say, oh, there's only one truth. No, that's not true. There's actually two types of truths in the world. There is a universal truth, like gravity, right?
Yep.
Affects us all the same. Then there's a personal truth. The personal truth is like religion or politics, right? It can be just as truthful to you as gravity, but it might not be to him. It's a personal truth.
And it may not be backed by the evidence.
And it might or might not be backed by the evidence. And so we have to understand what we can't do is apply a personal truth in a universal decision. A universal truth like gravity, yes. But you cannot, this is why, whether it's political or religious or anything else, a personal truth should never be used in a decision that affects more than yourself. And it's hard to do. It's hard to do because you think you're doing the right thing. You think everybody feels that way and everybody's like you, but they're not. And that's what we have to avoid. This is part of that human experience again, right? We're looking through a lens that say, well, this is my personal truth and it's a universal truth. Well, is it really though? I mean, it's a personal truth, but is it really a universal truth? And if it's not, then maybe you should try to remove that personal truth out of the equation and just stick to the universal truths. But that's hard to do. Because a lot of people don't even know the difference. I don't care if you're liberal or conservative or anywhere in between. People have their opinions. And man, there are people that are really believe in their opinions. They're willing to do extreme stuff because their personal truth they think is a universal truth. Man, and they do things that, don't think for 1 second somebody who I hate to be crude here, but burns himself alive in protest, That's a universal truth for them, even though for us it may be a personal truth. I mean, they are willing to give their lives for it, right?
Right.
So we have to understand that. And in government's no different. Religion's no different. You know, where a personal truth becomes a universal truth. That's the reason why ISIS felt the way they did, because, you know, they think, well, the whole world needs to be the way. This is universal truth. And I'm not bashing on anybody who's Muslim. Most of my friends were Muslim in college. But extremism, again, is extremism. Whether it's Muslim extremism, Christian extremism, Judaic, Judaic extremism, that's right. It doesn't matter what it is. And then you have governmental extremism. And that's also a problem.
How much did they impact? How much was that a constant thorn in your side as it pertains to actions that could or could not be taken by ATIP?
You know what? There was some people, I won't say the person's name, there was another individual that was part of the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence who's very well known, very vocal about his personal views, religious views, and he made decisions based off of it. Again, it's one of those things. It didn't affect us other than maybe for funding. But I did not feel day to day that there was this pressure by them. We got up to a certain point and they kind of said, stop here.
Yeah.
Like, whoa. Okay. And we didn't stop. So, other than a curiosity of saying, wow, that's interesting. I actually came face to face with one of these guys. It did not, I don't think it really impacted. Now, there's other people in ATIP that will probably violently disagree. Like, oh man, these are the guys that created such a headache for us. And they did. I think that story will probably come out at some point. They did make our life hell for a while, ironically enough, right? But it didn't affect me that much personally.
Well, one of the arguments a lot of people who may be purely on the religious side make is that, you know, they'll point to the fact that we have no physical evidence of this stuff. It just leaves a mark, so it's a demonic creature. And, you know, look at Leviticus 10:15. It'll tell you that's why that hole's right there in the wheat field or whatever. But
isn't religion itself, what facts are they basing it in other than Scripture? I mean, religion itself takes faith.
Exactly.
Right? Religion itself is belief in the supernatural, whether you like it or not.
Yes.
Now, and it's not a bad thing. It's just, it is. So there's no evidence that you have right now. It's a story that someone written down and you decide to accept it as truth. And by the way, that's a personal truth, right? That you feel is a universal truth. But at the end of the day, you don't have evidence. You weren't there. You didn't see the parting of the waters. You didn't see the miracles and the water into wine. You weren't there.
Agreed entirely. And to your point that you brought up earlier in the conversation, it can exist on the other side of this with a religion and UFOs or something, saying like, oh, were you there in Virginia in 96?
That's right.
You know what I mean?
That's right.
So
which, by the way, could you make a really good point
Please,
here, which is, I think, is something I've never really addressed. If we're not careful with this UAP topic, if it hasn't already started to, it could become a religion, and we need to avoid that.
Oh, it has started.
Hope not. Because that is not the intent of these conversations, and it should not be. It should not be a religion. And I am concerned that in 20, 30, 40 years, 100 years, 200 years from now, it could very well be a religion, and it should not be a religion.
Yeah, Lou, I think it already has become that way, and I think you're actually unwitting guinea pig with that, unfortunately. Because again, you talked about being the messenger with, just delivering a message here, and there's people who view that as prophetic. On the other end of it, there's people that also view that as whatever the opposite is, like the devil. So when I look at you, this is a good time to go into this to really address like head on where you're coming from. In the past, episode 151, I had Ron James in here, who's talked with you before for his documentary, and then episode 179, I had a Nick Pope. I think like 3 hours into Nick Pope's, we talked about yours. Nick is another guy who comes from government or whatever. And in these conversations and in some others, a point where I've been critical of you is based on the words that you've said yourself in the past and actually said to me before we were on air today, which is that, this is a fact. Like, you are an intel guy.
Right.
So I always joke and go, all right.
I am.
I'm like, all right, Fed, like, what do we got right here?
Right.
But online, you see two things. You either see people who are like, no, he's been sent by God, you know, not literally, God himself to deliver the great word of UAP.
Don't say that, man.
And then you have people on the other side who are like, you know, abolish every three-letter agency. This is our scumbag Fed coming out here and doing whatever. I was more in the middle in the sense that I'm like, okay, maybe he just really is a part of an op and he's read in on things that I'm not. So maybe there's a good reason for that, but I don't fucking know. So my job is not to sit here, therefore, and believe what he says because, again, he's worked in the government and, you know, it could be like, if this is a topic I'm interested in, like I am in UFOs, UAPs, he may be saying things that are not true. Maybe for a good reason, maybe for a bad reason too. Maybe you're a bad guy, Lou. Right. But like, I don't know this. Now, I see 3 doors with you. Maybe there's like 5, but we're going to put it down to 3. Number 1 is, you know, let's call it like the Stephen Greenstreet door. He's completely full of shit. He's making it all up. There's no record of anything. And I disagree with Stephen on some of the evidence that he's uncovered there. But he's like kind of the heel to it, right? He's the opposite. The second door is you're either mostly telling the truth or like almost all the truth. Maybe there's some things that, you know, you reviewed the evidence and you got it wrong, but like you're out here and you're actually giving all the information and it's in a purely kind of benevolent way, like you've said, where you feel like you have a moral duty to tell people things that they have a right to know, that humanity has a right to know, to say nothing of the United States of America's citizens. The third door is it's a mix. And the third door could be that it's like, you know, and this is a strong word to use, but it could be like some sort of psyop where, let me just paint a picture here. You guys on the back end, you know, a 22-year intelligence veteran, if you're still in, a 29-year intelligence veteran, you have access to such crazy information that you have been able to simulate how society may handle this information if it was given to them, to the point that you are able to see, using all your great tools back there, they're like, ooh, this could cause ontological shock or an existential crisis if we just dump this on people. Therefore, someone like a Lue Elizondo, someone like a Chris Mellon, someone like a David Grush could be sent out there to reveal some truths in the midst of other stuff that might not be true, or more likely revealing truths to make it sound really important when in reality the crazier shit is over here and you want to, I don't know, limited hangout, get people away to focus on this. So when you look at these 3 doors, obviously the first one you're going to disagree with, which is that, you know, Lou's full of shit, his career wasn't real. Yeah. But when you look at the other 2 doors, could you see why people might make the argument on door 3 there?
I can see why people see all 3 doors. And there's more doors than that. I mean, I can tell you the door that I think I'm in.
Okay.
You know,
let's hear that.
But it's a little different. First of all, let me put cards on the table. If you ask me to choose between national security and disclosure, like real national security, I will always choose national security. I've never made any bones about it. I love my country and I will protect and defend this country. Period. Full stop. Secondly, I want government accountability. That's what I want, whether it's with this topic or another topic. There is a right way and a wrong way to do things. I am very concerned, and it's probably because of my old generation, based upon the previous studies, that some people can find this information disruptive, okay? What we call catastrophic disclosure. I don't want that. I want constructive disclosure. I want to tell the American people, let them have whatever they can have legally, up to that point that they can't have it anymore. But that's not my decision to make. All I can do is continue to try to push for it. Ultimately, it's the government's decision to do that. And I won't override the government. I won't do it. I've made it very, very clear. I am not trying to hurt or disrupt our government. I'm trying to help it. It's backed itself into a corner for 70 years plus, potentially for decades. And now we're at a point that people have the lowest level of faith and confidence in our government and our institutions. Why? Because we haven't been honest with the American people. Oh, the Pentagon never lies, right? Unless you talk about the Pentagon Papers, unless you talk about, Iran-Contra, unless you talk about the Afghanistan withdrawal. I mean, we haven't been. And our government has done some terrible things to people in the past. Look at the syphilis experiments. I mean, we let people die, man. I mean, that's die.
Government killing people? It would never happen.
Yeah, right. So, my point being is that the government hasn't always been necessarily looking at the best interests of the American people. But this is a topic, I think, where I always believe that America can handle the truth. I think America deserves the truth. And I think there's a right and wrong way to have the conversation. And I want us to have a conversation, like I said, both from a national security perspective, but then there's the other part of the conversation that affects everybody differently and yet equally, right? Whether it's philosophically or psychologically or sociologically or even theologically. My hope is that the American people can have the conversation for themselves and at that point make the decision what it means to you. And then if at the end of the day you guys say, yeah, great, go get a Big Mac, fine. But at least you had the opportunity to have that conversation, right? You make that decision for yourself. And at that day, I will work at Walmart. I'm cool. No sweat. Done. But at least be able to have the conversation. That's what I want to see happen. That is the door I am in. And yes, I am still very loyal. Yes, I will still defend my country and work for my government if asked to and when asked to. But it's not an either or. It's like, oh, well, since he does that, he must be not for the people. That's bullshit, man. We are creating a fake narrative. We're creating a binary solution. This is not a binary thing. It's not either or. Either you're loyal to the government or you're loyal to the American people. It shouldn't be that way. You should be able to be loyal to both. That's what you should be. And it can be that way. And that's what it used to be. And that's what it should be again. Because remember, government for the people, by the people. It's not this big monolithic thing there that's, oh, there's government, then there's a people. Because if that's the case, then, man, we're lost. We're done. This is then, you know what, forget society. We'll go move to Canada or something because that's not the way our government was supposed to be. People died in wars. We fought revolutions so we could have that power. So the people made the decisions. And you have a representative government that are interested in the interest in the will of the people. This is we are going to lose the whole thing if we don't recognize that. It'll be gone. And then everything that everybody's doing is going to be a waste. This is my concern. And I know what revolution is because my family came from it. And people don't realize that. And all these little nitnoids out there in the Twitter sphere who armchair quarterbacks who've never served their country, never served a day in their life doing anything other than being selfish and doing something for themselves have no freaking clue what's actually going on. And they create drama. They're not interested in the drama. They manufacture the drama. They're actually out there wanting the drama. And then they watch how it goes down. Oh, look, I made an impact. Someone made a comment. You know, that is not my focus. That's why I don't deal with it. I don't care about it. My focus is on this type of conversation. This is a national level conversation. And by the way, it's not just with UAP. You can see it right now. Look at the two people we have that are vying for president. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to say bad or good about either one, but let me ask you this. Is there anybody else probably, maybe, kind of, sort of,
literally
who could
everybody
be qualified?
Yeah.
Right? Is that really, really, really America's best?
No.
You know, or are we just, well, you know what? I'll go ahead and compromise with, you know, that person because that one over there I hate just a little bit more.
Right.
You know? And so, and we see this all the time. And then we see the active pitting against each other. There are people out there that are these agent provocateurs that thrive off of it. You know, wouldn't it be great
like online, you're saying?
Everywhere, in the media, mainstream media. Wouldn't it be great if a president candidate came out and said, you know what, I'm not going to say anything bad about my opponent. In fact, my opponent probably make a damn good president, but let me tell you where we differ. This is my perspective on how we should fix things. And then the other person, well, this is how I think we should fix it. Imagine that.
That'd be nice.
Instead of just throwing, he said, she said, he said, she said.
Which is all it is.
Which is all it is. That's all it is. And it's to the point where we think it's normal now. It's like a Super Bowl, my team versus your team. It's not a Super Bowl, man. This is life. This is our country. It's not us versus you. We're all in this shit together, man. And so forgive me for being emotional about this, but this is what drives me. And when people try to put in a false narrative or try to, you know, well, Lue must think this or Lue must think that. You know what? Think for yourself. Don't worry about what Lue thinks. It doesn't matter what Lue thinks. What matters is the facts and the details, and then make your decision for yourself. Don't be lazy.
Right.
Do your research, right? Understand what's actually happening here. And don't expect some person to give you a soundbite, because now we watch the media. Not only do we want to know the news, but we want to know even what to feel about it, right? So what do? We turn into our little echo chamber, depending on what side of the aisle we're on politically, and we watch our shows. Right. And we're not willing to watch, oh, I don't like them. They're biased. Hey, don't look now, dummy. So are you. How about expand your horizons and look at other sources of information and start thinking for yourself? That is what this country used to be. There used to be a point where you could get on the news. You had no idea the political affiliation of any of the reporters because it was just the facts.
That was a nicer world. I got Walter Cronkite up in the corner up there because
absolutely
that was a better world to live in.
Well, that was an honest world to live in, even when we were doing dishonest things, right? And this is my concern. This is my concern with where we are now as a country.
Hey guys, if you haven't already, please be sure to share around this episode on social media and with your friends. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Reddit. It's all a huge help, and I appreciate all of you who have been doing that each week.
And this is why it frustrates me so bad, because ultimately, at the end of the day, my focus is not the UFO community. It never has been. It's on the other 99.9% of the population that's never even considered this topic seriously. That's my focus. And through this, maybe we can have a bigger conversation about what? Accountability, transparency, and anti-corruption. That's really what I'm hoping to pursue here. This is why this topic, this is just one example. It's a big one, a really big one. But this is just one example of things we got to fix in this country.
But if you can recognize, and I agree with you, that we're living in a country now where people... It's devolved to such a point of he said, she said, and shit that like these are the presidential candidates we have to choose from, and it's a giant reality show. Just at a high level, one example right there to say nothing of the rest of the internet that we can all see. I can see how psychologically people that you've spent your career around sitting in serious rooms like skiffs that have seen all the worst shit that this world has to offer and know things through the literal job description of your jobs that, we'll never know, or, maybe we'll find out 100 years from now when it gets declassified. I can see how psychologically there's this boundary that forms where suddenly you guys in your groupthink in this scenario are like, look, we actually know what's going on here, and we're going to save the people from themselves because they have no fucking idea what
100%. There are people, and this is one of the things I explored, because there are people, this is why people... I'm so glad you brought this up. You could not be more accurate. There are people now who want disclosure and they want their pound of flesh. All these people that are part of legacy efforts, put them in front of a court and put them all in jail for lying to the American people. I don't think that's the way to do it. I think what we do is we incentivize them. We give them an award, give them a promotion, say, hey, listen, great. Thank you for your interest in national security. Good job. Now's the time to have the conversation. I think that most of these people that kept this so secret for so long actually believed in their heart they were doing it for the right reason. I think there were people out there who actually felt, look, we already had studies done. We know that the American population can't take this right now. They cannot process this information. They're too worried about Russians and nukes and all this other stuff. We're not going to put that as a priority right now. And by the way, no use having this conversation with the American people because we still have no idea where they're from or what they want or how it works or anything like that, right? Yeah. We're just now scratching the surface. So it's just like when we were flying the U-2 over Russia, and Russia never, ever, ever made an issue. We flew it in contravention of an actual treaty with them that we would not fly manned reconnaissance missions over mainland Russia. And what do? We built the U-2 with the CIA and Lockheed Martin Skunkworks, and we start flying them, and the Russians never reacted. So we thought, hey, the plane flies too high and too fast, they can't detect it. The Russians were tracking every single flight from day one. The only reason why they didn't make an issue of it is why? Because they didn't have a capability to neutralize it. And it wasn't until they were able to actually successfully shoot one down with an SA-2 surface-to-air missile did they tell the world the reality, hey, look what America is doing, right? So why admit a problem for which there is no solution? I can understand from a national security perspective, people in our own government having that same mindset. Why are we going to acknowledge a problem which we don't even understand yet? I get that. I don't agree with it, but I can respect that understanding. I can respect that mindset, and in their hearts, they feel like they really are doing their patriotic duty. So from that perspective, I get it. And back to what you just said to me, a bunch of guys sitting around in a skiff and saying, hey, these morons can't handle it.
I'm not saying that's their attitude. I'm saying it's like a passive feeling that comes in like, oh my God, if only these people knew. You know what I mean?
Well, but that's every day in the intelligence world, brother. I mean, I don't sleep well at night because of crap I've learned. And it has nothing to do with the UAP community. I mean, I'm telling you, that's the cost of information. People say, I want to know. But, you go to the doctor and the doctor says, hey, listen, before we talk, you want me to be truthful with you, everything, right? On your I want tell me about my medical exam. You sure you want me to be truthful with you? Yeah, I want you to be truthful with me. You have stage 4 cancer. Oh, shit. I wish you would have been truthful with me. You know, I mean, I would have been better off not knowing that. Or going to a friend and saying, hey, listen, this fiance you have, yeah, great guy, great gal. Do you want to, I've got some information. Do you want me to share it with you? Yeah, let me know. You sure? Yeah, of course I want to know. They've been cheating on you the entire time. Oh, I didn't want to know, right? So in intelligence is like that. You learn things all the time that you know, probably would be better off not knowing, but it's your job. And so that's not just with the UFO stuff. That's with a lot of things, national security. There's a lot of things that would keep people up at night. Fortunately, we have really good people in the intelligence community that are professionals, and they can do their job. And their job is to stop the worst thing from happening. And most of the time, they're very successful with that. So, you know, if there was any type of consolation prize in this, is that there are very, very good people, very patriotic people who lose sleep every night so we don't have to.
Yeah.
And that's why it's important that we don't villainize everybody in the government. You know, the moment you say, oh, I worked intel, oh, you're one of those. All right, look, it was a job, okay? But we didn't do it to deceive anybody else. We were deceiving the enemy, not you, not the American people weren't the enemy, you know? Denial and deception and information operations and all those things. You know, you do it to fight and win wars. You don't do it because you're bored. You don't do it because, you know, you're just, let's go figure something out to go and be disruptive. That's not the way it works. And I think that's part of the problem we have in this conversation, because not our conversation, but in the bigger conversation, because there's such a lack of trust in the government now. This is why it's important now more than ever. We need to show good faith in the government. We have to do it. And because right now,
I see what I thought you said. Okay. Yeah.
So you see in the context I'm trying to say here, right?
Yes.
So this is, again, why this accountability and transparency is so important. Now, at the end of the day, is there a better way to do it? Could be. Could I be wrong in this approach? Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Yeah, I think people are always going to be skeptical because of the fact that we've seen such, as you laid out yourself with some examples, we've seen such a breakdown in the trust of institutions through some things that they have done wrong, which again, and this is unfortunate, but my friend Jared Dillian, who I had on the podcast for episode 182 or 183, he is a former Lehman Brothers guy. And he had this line in a memoir he wrote about Lehman Brothers, is that he put it like this. He said there were approximately 20,000 people who worked at Lehman Brothers. And I can tell you 19,995 of them were really good at their jobs and tried very hard.
That's right.
Now, I always amend it to probably 19,970, but you get the point.
Yeah.
It takes a very small turd in the punch bowl to ruin that punch bowl.
Right. And that's why in government especially it's so important. This is my anti-corruption issue here, because it just takes a few people in government to do bad things and the entire government looks crap. And this is another concern, because it's easy to blame the government. Oh, this government is big, you know, huge, monolithic thing. No, government's just made of people. And there are some good people, really good people in government, and there's a couple that, you know, not so good.
Yeah.
Not so good, right? And unfortunately, it kind of paints with a broad stroke the entire government. And so it's important we don't villainize the government. Don't, you know, it's like a police officer. Yeah, there's a couple dirty cops out there, but most of them are putting their life on the line to save your ass, you know? And you know, they're good people. They go home, they pay their bills, and they're putting their life on the line every day for you. Same with our military, same with our intelligence professionals. But it just takes one or two, and now you've got a corrupt police department.
That's right. Now, look, if we're going to be fair and we're going to be assessing the morality and the actions of the government, we also have to look at the other side of this, which is something you outline in your book pretty well, which is the contract side, the private side. So you learned through this program that companies, I'm just going to name a couple here, like Lockheed and Northrop, had been in, I'll just use my own term, like in lockstep with previous UFO-related things with the government, to the point that you allege you saw evidence through the files you had access to show that companies like a Lockheed, like a Northrop, had been in charge of UFO crash retrievals and given so much authority by the government in this case as like a hand-in-hand military-industrial complex, I guess, in a way, such that the evidence recovered from these were in places that you had no idea about in the government and couldn't ever access yourself. Therefore, it's pretty much all on the private side for them to potentially reverse engineer things that you, the government, wouldn't even know about.
Correct.
That was kind of an issue, no?
Yeah, it was. Let's look at a real case scenario here. Let's look at the Apollo missions, okay, and the early days of the U.S. government's space race and race to the moon. It was about 10 years. It's when Kennedy said, we're going to put a person on the moon, and not because it's easy, but because it's hard, et cetera, et cetera. And that was in 1969, we successfully landed somebody on the moon. That was a 10-year endeavor. Now, we had to invent everything from scratch to do that. No one had been to really space before. No one had ever been certainly to another celestial body, and nobody knew what it was even like and how to do it and how to get there and what was involved with technologies. And so we had about 9 to 10 years to figure it out, maybe a little less. As a result of that, and think about this, 6,200 industries and products were invented and created to do that. So, for example, things like the LED light bulb, Velcro, right? The CAT scan. These are technologies in some cases that have changed humanity forever, have benefited our well-being, all because of a space race and a competition for a little less than a decade with a foreign adversary, right? These technologies have long outlived the initial purpose for which they were created, right? Imagine a company that has access to material or technology and without fair competition, able to do things and make money based upon that. Now, I'm not against capitalism at all. Capitalism works. It's fantastic as long as we all play by the same rules, right? Capitalism doesn't work when one company gets an unfair advantage over another, and therein lies part of the problem. Because if you have material that was in the possession of the government and says, okay, you can use this to analyze it for us, that doesn't mean you can just turn around and start making profit off of it and creating stuff that we don't agree for you to make. That property belongs to the American people. That belongs to the government, not you. Let's make that clear up front. You don't own that property unless we sell it to you, right? And so therein lies part of the problem. Also, you have legal consequences. So let's, for example, say, here we go. Company, that's I won't do that. There we go. We got this and we got this. Company A and Company B on the government, right? And I find something interesting in the desert. And I say, hey, Company A, I want you to go ahead and analyze that for me. Okay. Company B, don't worry about that. You just go over here and do your thing. 10 years later, what happens? Company A becomes a multi-billion-dollar aerospace company. Okay? Company B, what happens? Well, they went bankrupt. 200 jobs were lost, and the investors who had that money in there, gone, right? What just happened? Well, the U.S. government gave an unfair advantage to Company A instead of Company B.
Right.
They make the money, they make the profit. Now, there are actual rules and laws and regulations like SEC violations that if I do that and this company goes bankrupt, now there's a real legal liability on my part because I broke the law. I did something that I wasn't allowed to do. Because,
as the government?
As a government, yeah, because I gave an unfair advantage to one company over another, right? There's rules and mechanisms to do stuff. I want to give Company A material. There's rules and procedures to do that. I can't just go and give it to them. There are, unless they are a prime contractor and I have these avenues that are taken care of and blah, 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 there are laws against being able to give these unfair advantages. Because why? There is money behind it. We're in a capitalist world. People invested in Company B because they thought they were going to be a company that has the same type of potential as Company A. But we didn't know that there was an unfair relationship between a couple people in the government and Company A. So here, we're going to slide that to you, right? It's like all these sweetheart deals where you're paying $22,000 for a toilet seat for an airplane.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, what? Well, how does that happen? Well,
Inside
it happens because someone in the government has a sweetheart deal with somebody here and they get away with it, right?
So are you saying, and maybe I'm taking this a little too far, but are you saying we gave sweetheart deals to certain companies as it pertains to, say, UFO crash retrievals, and we had now created a beast that we cannot tame?
It appears that may very well be the case. That may be one of the issues that we're dealing with. And if that's the case, okay, well, there's real legal consequences. How do we fix this without, do you give them amnesty? I think you do. People are going to say, "Oh, you can't do that." Well, listen, do you want the truth or not? What's the cost of it? There's examples where we do this truth and reconciliation. We did it in Rwanda. We've done it with other countries where we say, look, a lot of bad things were done on both sides. We're willing to forgive all of it if we can reconcile and if we can move forward together towards the truth. And I think that's the way we do it. This is why I said we don't villainize those who are part of these efforts. I know it's easy. People want to do that and they want their pound of flesh, and I say no. I say,
yeah, but the company on that end, I want to stick with your example here. Company A, if they became a multi-billion-dollar or whatever, the government making that mistake is not their fault. They just reap the benefit of it. So what incentive do they have to come to the table? Like, what can the government legally say to them? You allowed them to do it.
Well, this is part of the eminent domain conversation, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
Which is, by the way, I'm not going to get into because it's very controversial. But look, the government has the right through eminent domain to do whatever the hell it wants. If you got some and it's better and it's in the interest of national security or national interest, we'll buy your house, we'll put a highway right through it, we'll do whatever we need to do. Make no mistake, we will absolutely do it, right? The same holds true with this. The problem is the government's been saying no for so long it doesn't exist. They don't want it back. They're like, I don't want it. Yeah. you keep it. You figure out. I don't want nothing to do with that. So it's a double-edged sword. This is a very. It's actually a great conversation because it kind of highlights some of the complexities we're dealing with. People just say, "Well, I just want the truth." Well, but it's not that simple. It's not just okay. Here's the truth, because the consequences of that, how you get the truth, can make or break something. And there are people there that don't want that to happen.
Well, a huge problem with the truth that people have with anything involving the phenomenon is that, as Michio Kaku says, we have no physical evidence. Steal a pen. For God's sake, steal. And I hear him because, I had Jesse, I just recorded with Jesse Michaels. That's going to be coming out 1 or 2 episodes after you. But he talked about the bovine that he saw and showed it with Gary Nolan that Jacques Vallée had brought to him. So maybe there's something physical there. But it's not like we have, when David Grush came out, who was able to remove the curtains and say, here's the UFO we recovered in 1933. And it's the same thing with you. You're out here saying, I've seen the evidence written up in papers, and I think you're also saying maybe you've seen some physical evidence too. But can you understand why skeptics out there are saying, well, this is religious as well, if we don't have physical evidence?
Yeah, my response, well, first of all, we do have physical evidence. It's just you don't see it because it's with the government and it's being,
or with the private companies.
Or the private companies, right, who work for the government, by the way, right? So
allegedly.
Yeah, or should anyways, right? And you're right. You should I'm not asking you to believe me. Your government's already told you that you've had a former director of national intelligence, Radcliffe, former director of the CIA, Brennan. You've had a former president of the United States. You had a president just now a week and a half ago, a former president that said, hey, if I get elected, I'm going to release the UFO files. Because the guy asked him, would you do it? And he said, yeah, I'll do it. And oh, by the way, I tried to do it before, but I got a lot of flack for doing it. I mean,
do it.
But did you hear that? What he says? He says, I tried to do it before, but I got a lot of resistance. Wait a minute. Do you know what that means? That's acknowledged. That's saying, yes, I've been briefed to it. I want to do it. But someone is telling me no. So, don't believe Lue Elizondo. Don't listen to Lue Elizondo. I don't give a shit. Do what he said. Go do your research, man. Don't be lazy. Get out there and be proactive. Read what's out there. Read what people are saying. People in authority who are telling you this. Not forget Lue Elizondo. It's there.
Yeah,
it's there. You don't need it from me. All you need from me is maybe a little bit of my background and XYZ. But there's already data there. You've already had an acknowledgement by the U.S. government in many ways of the reality of this topic. You've already had these reports to Congress. They said, look, every time we go and try to figure these things out, we have more, not less, right? Government said, we have complete air domain awareness over our country. What happens when we start recalibrating our radars to look for UAP? Boom, surveillance satellite from China just wafting over northern continental United States. Right. Yeah. So if you look at the data, what the data is suggesting, that is all I'm asking people to do. I'm not, and this is why I don't give my opinion. But what do you think, Lue? It doesn't matter what Lue thinks. What matters is what you think. Stop asking me that. Don't make me think for you, because that is your ability to look at information objectively is sacred. No one should be thinking for you. You should be thinking for you. And so my job is easy. Here's the facts and the data. You decide what you want to do with it. That is really what this boils down to.
Have you stood in front of a recovered UFO?
I am, I can talk about what's in the book because I got cleared for it. So let me say this. I have had in my possession material that was allegedly recovered from a UFO.
Who gave it to you?
I cannot say.
Okay.
It was, but I have been told, I was warned very, very clearly, this I'll share with you. I was told several years ago that I could never talk about crash retrievals or material, ever. And I signed a paperwork for it, right? So that in itself should be evidence for you. But more importantly than that, it's only been recently I'm allowed to talk about the one piece of material because it's in my book and I got cleared for it.
Okay, let's talk about it.
I have to honor that. So just so you understand, I'm not trying to be evasive. I don't want to go to jail. Okay?
I hear you.
So there is material that I've had access to that was clearly engineered. We had one of the very best, I can't say which one of the very best aerospace companies and government contractors. Okay, so you can try to figure out who that was.
Lockheed.
Try to replicate.
Sorry,
I'm not saying one way or the other. Tried to replicate that material. And at a cost of $1 million, and it broke the machine, they're able to create this material at a macro level, a sandwich between one piece and another piece. This material, up to 3 years ago, I don't know about now, but 3 years ago, we could not replicate. We could not. We did not have the technology to manufacture it. When you look at this material, and you found out, when we know for sure we found it and where it was found, temporally, there's a problem because this material has obviously been engineered with a technology that at least we're pretty sure we don't have. Maybe the Russians, maybe the Chinese, sure. Back in the 1990s, 1940s, definitely not. That is equivalent to us as if you have a piece of material that says, hey, this is from 1940, whatever. And you look at it and you say, oh, wow, that's pretty interesting because we didn't have that technology. That's like going into, as I've said before, going into King Tut's tomb for the very first time as we've discovered it. And as you chisel away the plaster wall and you peek inside, you see a fully assembled 747 jet. It doesn't make sense. Right. They did not have the technology to do that back then. I don't care what you think, but there it is, right? So how to get in there? It's the same thing. It's the same issue we have here. If we don't even have the technology now, someone did. It came. I mean, it came from somewhere. And when you look at the atomic, so we go. There's 3 levels of analysis, and maybe it might be helpful if I explain it real quick. So, I find this okay.
That makes noise, by the way. If you want to do it, no, on the bottom, see the on button. Now hit it.
Okay. Okay.
Little known trick.
So imagine being Da Vinci and walking in a desert in the 1600s and finding this, right?
Yeah, it'd be trippy.
Yeah. So it's made of plastic and it talks. It's magic, right? It's magic. So my point being, it's kind of in the same way. Da Vinci would never expect something like this and would have no idea its use, right? And understand what a battery is and how this speaker works and it's magic. There's 3 types of analysis you would do. First of all, if I find this in the desert and let's say I was Da Vinci and I had the technology, first I'm going to do is I'm probably going to weigh it and I'm going to do a physical analysis. I'm going to say, okay, it's hard, it's solid, it's made of some sort of plastic material, it weighs half a kilogram. Roughly this dimension. It's not electric. It doesn't conduct electricity, but something inside does, blah, 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 blah. If that's interesting enough, that'll warrant a chemical molecular analysis. Now I want to see it. I know it's some hard solid surface, but I want to see the relationship between the molecules themselves. How are they arranged? What is the relationship with the other molecules in there? Well, I analyze this. It's got some copper in it. It's got some lithium. It's got some plastic. Polymer. It's got some aluminum in it, right? And if that's interesting enough, then I say, okay, I'm going to spend the extra money. I'm going to do a atomic analysis at the nano level. I want to see how not the molecules, but how the atoms are actually arranged. Because within the natural environment, there's a variation of isotopes that we find here on this planet. And it turns out that they're natural. There are some that are not natural. And that's the reason why, speaking of King Tut's tomb, this is why it's kind of important, because for decades, there was a little dagger that we found in King Tut's tomb that we just thought was a neat little dagger. It wasn't until we did the analysis on it that we realized it wasn't from Earth. The metal came from a meteorite. And we know that. And that's when all of a sudden it became important. Like, oh my gosh, this is why they buried him with the dagger, because this is made from meteorite. It's not from Earth, right? It's magical or whatever. There's significance behind it. You know that by looking at isotopic ratios at the atomic level and how they are arranged. And when you find that atoms are arranged with such a level of precision, that takes a lot of technology. It's really, really expensive, right? And the uses for that are fairly finite, at least from our own technological perspective. There's only so many reasons you would want to invest in making something with that level of accuracy. Remember, at a cost of $1 million, we were able to put two pieces together. This is much, much more complicated than that. So that is why material analysis is so important. That's why when you come across a piece of material that's been engineered and then you find out when it was recovered, right? That kind of changes, you could say, yeah, maybe Russia, China has that ability now or has in the last 5 or 10 years, not decades ago. And so that is part of the compelling evidence. And now I'm not a material scientist, but we had people that looked at it, right? There's people that even to this day and age in the government are analyzing stuff. I can't say who, can't say where, but they are interested in analyzing this type of material, and it's happening. So I know I'm not scratching your itch specifically, but I'm trying to have a conversation while getting around any issues that might get me in trouble.
Right.
Because I can't be specific, but I'm giving you an example of how you do analysis, why it's important, and what makes a piece of material so compelling. That's what makes that material compelling.
Yeah, it always fucks with my head thinking about this because you're assuming you have some, whether it be a crazy advanced civilization or future humans, whatever it is, it's like these beings would have so much more understanding of whatever the physical world is than we do, to the point that I've always said, like, wouldn't they be able to simulate everything ahead of time? Like, wouldn't they be able to simulate a crash happening or something like that so that it wouldn't happen? I mean, you talk in your book about your conversations with Hal Puthoff, for example, on Roswell, where he's got some fascinating thoughts there, but he's like, hey, it was probably some sort of EMP interference from our universe that fucked with the craft falling to Earth, and boom, there were two of them, and one of them we were then able to recover, and then the government tried to cover it up and say it was a balloon. So, when you see things like that, it's like our way less advanced squirrel species is able to have some capabilities that fuck up these civilizations so much that we're able to even get evidence like that, allegedly.
Yeah. So your argument is that, we're the monkeys on the ground. It couldn't be things, if they're those so advanced, how are they allowed to be so vulnerable and susceptible, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we are in a beautiful place here in Hoboken. And again, I'll be respectful of privacy. But I noticed this morning when I was getting up and walking outside the hotel, you had this beautiful view of the Hudson. I mean, it's just gorgeous, just beautiful, beautiful. And, it was only a few years ago that you had what some call a miracle here. You had a commercial jet.
Yep, Sully,
and crashed. What you want to remind your audience what happened?
So it was a Tom Hanks movie later, but they took off from LaGuardia, went up into the sky as they were coming up. Sully Sullenberger, the captain, realized there were birds. The birds came into the engine. Suddenly the plane failed, and Sully used unbelievable skills that he had acquired over 40-some years or something of flying, was able to pull it back around right out here, correctly as you point out, on the Hudson in between Manhattan and Hoboken, and basically land the plane perfectly such that it didn't crash on impact and split apart, and saved everyone on the plane.
Yeah, amazing, huh? If you're a bird, wouldn't you be asking the same question? These humans are so advanced. How can a dumb bird bring down a jet full of people and almost kill every single human being? A bird.
That's a good parallel you just gave.
Don't forget to tip your bartenders and your waitresses.
So you think that some of this is just straight up a mistake, because again, maybe but let me counter argue that. Maybe we are the separation and advancement of us to birds, which is quite large. Let's be honest. Maybe it's not nearly as large as it is with these civilizations. How can we even know that? Like you talk about in your
question.
book. You talk about in your book not knowing whether or not this is a threat, but treating it as it could be. And like maybe they're on the battlefield getting ready for battle right here, and they've just been doing it for the last, I don't know, 80 years specifically or something like that, because time is, 1 second to them. What is 80 years to us? Like, you see where it gets a little convoluted and it gets beyond what we can even like have a scope of intelligence
Well,
on?
I do. And this is why I think this type of conversation is so important, because we're putting ourselves always in that box of, anthropomorphic. If there's so much advantage and how's it a mistake? Remember, we may be dealing something that is uniquely, potentially not human at all, right? So, it's hard. It's hard to do that because we are innately human. How do you not think like a human if that's all we do, right? So it is. I can see how it gets fuzzy. I can see how people get frustrated and they kind of go through these mental gymnastics of, okay, they're millions of years ahead of us. Well, maybe not. Maybe they're not 10 years, 50 years ahead of us. We have evolved more in the last 100 years technologically than we have in the last 100,000. Okay?
Yeah.
So it's a logarithmic. Yeah, it's a curve. That's right. And so is it possible that 100 years from now that we're going to have the exact same ability that they have?
Maybe.
Possible, right? They may not be millions. They may just be 100 years ahead of us, or they could be from right here. They're just, like I said, little beasties. We're at the point now where we're beginning to interact with them. They've been here all along, baby. We don't know. So we have to keep, and this is why I always tell people, in my opinion, which I don't like to do very often, we should keep all options on the table until they're not on the table. And are there people out there in the government that know more? Probably.
Yeah.
And they should come out. They should be able to talk to Congress. That's what I'm trying to do, is create an environment where ultimately the conversation can be had and people have the truth, whatever that truth is. Whatever that truth looks like, give the people the opportunity to have the truth and have the conversation for themselves. And then I'm done. I'm out.
Well, you're a veteran of this game, having been in it for the last 16, 17 years, whatever it is, when you were first read in. And yet when you come into it, you're joining a guy like Hal Puthoff, who's been read in for, at that point, like 45 years.
Oh, brother, don't think that fact didn't weigh on me. Every single person there had more experience than me by a lot.
But you're there with like Michael Jordan. Like, how do you even conceive like
you don't compete with Michael Jordan. You help Michael Jordan. When you're on the team and you come into the new team and you're with Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, you don't compete with them. You support them. That's what you do.
You're Steve Kerr.
I'm not even that. I'm the guy who's in the sidelines, giving them towels. I'm the towel boy and the water boy. No, you don't. And everybody has, I think. And God, I don't want to say everybody's a tool, because people, you're a tool. But the reality is that I look at all of us as tools in toolbox. And some of us are hammers, some of us are wrenches, some of us are screwdrivers. And you don't use a hammer to do a screwdriver's work. Yeah. And you don't use a screwdriver to do a hammer's work, right? So we all have our own skills, just like you have yours. With your audience, I could never do your job. I'd fail miserably. There are people in the government that have very specific niche capabilities. And when you can bring them all together, that's what makes a successful team. That's why you succeed. You have a great producer, you're doing what you're doing here, and you've got the right people and the right audience, and it's a team effort. It's the same thing with ATIP. It's the same thing with anything in the government, whether it's special operations or anything else. It is a team effort. It's a team that succeeds, and there is no I in team. In fact, I used to make a point when I talk to people about leadership, because everybody in government for some reason thinks they're a leader, and they think rank means something.
No.
I know.
I would never believe that.
It's insane. Yeah. And, I usually tell people, anybody who says that they're a leader probably isn't, because a real leader never says that they're a leader.
What's understood doesn't need to be explained.
100%. And, in government, a leader should never say the words me, mine, or I. It's always us, we, and ours, right? This is our team, and we succeed together. And it's not, this is my staff. Get the hell out of here. It ain't your staff. Government people are paying for it. Moron. You're a manager. You're not a leader. Big difference. You manage people. And by the way, there was a saying by somebody, a quote that I used to like, where they They say a manager will always say go. A leader says, let's go. And I would take that even a step further. A great leader says, I'll go first. I'm through the door first. And those are the signs of leadership. And that is how you succeed, whether it's chasing UFOs or it's chasing bad guys or being a politician. We are just so used to people in these positions of authority saying, me, mine, and I,
Yeah.
and I'm the director and my staff and my administration. Well, hold on there, cowboy. It ain't your administration. It's my administration. It's our administration. We're paying for it, right? You're just doing the job we asked you to do. That ain't your administration. That's the people's administration. But we're so accustomed to it. We're so used to it that we just accept it now.
Yeah.
And I reject it, man. I think this is part of our problem. And it's not just in the Department of Defense. It's not just in the CIA or in the intelligence community. It's the whole government now, man. And we are okay with it. Why?
Yeah.
Why have we got so used to, so accustomed to that mindset that we just not only do we not do anything about it, we agree with it?
Well, yeah, and I understand what you're saying, and also, like, you're a humble guy, but I don't think there's, from the outside, based on the story we've been given, which is what we can go off of, I don't think there's any evidence to not say you haven't had a clear leadership role, whether you like it or not, in whatever this is, the disclosure movement or something like that. I mean, you're one of the guys. This was a little hazy for me, so correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't want to be a
leader
details. in this conversation. I shouldn't be. There should be no one more important than anybody else.
But you're one of the guys that's responsible, or I think the leader that's responsible for, like, releasing the Gimbal video, getting those things out.
Sure, I was one of the first guys out of the plane door, but I'm not the invasion force, brother. I'm not. This is where again, it shouldn't be anybody. It shouldn't be a who. That's my point to all this. There shouldn't be any one person in charge, and I think that's part of why we're succeeding now, because this has been such a grassroots movement. It has really been something amazing. This is global, man. There are people all over the world, man, that are rallying for full disclosure, and that's not because of me. I mean, but they see me on a TV show or something like that. But I didn't make this happen. This is I think this is a coalescing of people. Really, if I had to really give anybody credit, it's you guys. It's your generation. My generation spent the last 70 years screwing this topic up. It's your generation that are saying, you know what, we want the truth. You know what,
we
can
got the
it.
internet.
So I think you guys, my generation has done a good job of blaming you guys. Like it's, oh, you guys in social media. Why do you always stuck in social media and YouTube? Look, my generation invented it, right? So who's at fault here?
Right.
Ain't you, us. I think we are where we are today in this conversation because your generation has decided not to allow the stigma and taboo that my generation imposed on this conversation. And you're just having a dialogue. And that's really why we're having the conversation now.
Well, and it's also the tools that are at our disposal to be able to spread things around the internet such that when we get evidence like the 2004 Fravor videos, the FLIR video, or the 2009 Gimbal video, which involves some of our carrier ships and everything, like we can at least look at something physical on the screen and say, oh, shit.
Right.
Now you saw the 2004 video for the first time in 2009, I believe, right?
Yeah, that was actually by Chad Underwood. It wasn't by Fravor. Fravor was there as an eyewitness, but the video was actually taken by another aircraft afterward by Chad Underwood.
Okay, and that one again showed the Tic Tac that was moving in ways that would match some of the 5 observables.
Correct.
What was the first time you saw that? Did you? I mean, you talk about being one of these gradual guys, like where you gradually start.
Oh, brother,
to come to truth.
I saw other videos. That's just one. I mean, there were some that were. I mean, there's one I really wish I could talk about. It was in 4K ultra high definition video. Anybody sees that video, and there's people in the intel community that have seen it, and they're just like, okay, yeah, that's a game changer. I mean, that there's no doubt what we're looking at that point. That is not ours. That's what frustrates me because those videos are there. There are people that are aware of it. A lot of people. It's kind of a bad kept secret at this point. The problem is how that video was taken, where it was taken, under the circumstances is very classified. So it probably won't ever see the light of day.
Convenient.
Yeah. No, I'll tell you, look, honestly, where it was, I mean, I looking at it, I can say, yeah, that probably shouldn't come out, as compelling as it is, because it is. There's reasons to keep that type. There's a couple videos there, well, more than a couple that really are sensitive because of the circumstances of the collection that we were doing. But there's other videos that I think should come out. I think you can scrub the metadata out of it, so you don't have locational data. There's ways where you can depixelate if you need to allow something to be released. And I'm for that. As long as we don't give away sources and methods, I think we should be as open as possible. The more videos we can release, the better. And look, some of them might have prosaic explanations, which would be great, right? Okay, case closed on that one. What about these other 10? What about these other 50? What about these other 100, right? Every time Arrow comes out with a report and they try to, and good on them, at least they're being honest with that. They're like, yeah, we had 144 incidents that we couldn't figure out. And then it became 300. Then it became 600. Then it became 800, right? And the numbers keep going up. Why? Because the more we look, the more we realize, shit, they're out there, man. There are things that are going on that, yeah, that's not our technology. We know that because we had no assets in the area at the time. And if that's adversarial technology, then we got a real problem because God forbid that this turns out to be adversarial technology. Because what would that mean? That would mean for the last 70 plus years, some foreign adversary has managed to engineer and deploy this capability over our sensitive military installations, over controlled U.S. airspace, and has done so with complete anonymity. Now, where was China back in the 1950s? In the middle of a famine.
Yeah.
Where was Russia? I mean, yeah, right. There's no way. And so this goes back to that question, what would that mean? Well, this would be the greatest intelligence failure this country has ever experienced, eclipsing that of even 9/11. Because despite the billions of dollars that we spend trying to keep a competitive technological advantage over our adversaries has been eclipsed by again, order of magnitude by some sort of adversary. So, that in itself is a problem. People bring it up as a counter argument. Well, what if it's for an adversary? Okay, well, if it is now, we're in big trouble. If it's from back then, we're even bigger trouble.
But there's a third door here, and I got to play devil's advocate on this. And it doesn't, by the way.
I know what you can say.
I don't think there's so many different possible sightings of UFOs and capabilities. I don't think this can explain everything, to be clear. And I think mathematically, just to put my opinion out there so people know where I stand, I think mathematically, from what we even know about the galaxy, there has to be intelligent life out there somewhere. Whether or not it's been here, we can have that debate. But I agree with you. I don't think it could be an adversary because they would have already fucking taken us at this point. That said, just in your program in the Pentagon, you had a situation where guys like you were on such a small team that people above you and below you didn't even know it existed.
That's correct.
Okay. So who's to say that the same thing doesn't exist with, DARPA, where there's such a limited number of people who are read in on the fact that physical world that we have as our current laws of physics, we had that figured out after we paperclipped everyone in 45. You know what I mean?
Let me just say, I hope that's the case. I would love that to be the case because then I can sleep a lot better at night.
Lue sleeps better at night. The Nazis helped us.
Well, my point being is that we have the technological advantage, right? That this would be some sort of blue force technology.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I would not be able to discuss at all what capabilities we might or might not have regarding any type of exotic technologies. Look, we got a lot of cool toys. We do.
If you even knew about it, though.
Even if whether I knew about it or not, I cannot confirm or deny anything regarding any type of blue force capability. What I can simply say is what we don't have, but I can't say what we have. I mean, let me see if I can be more explicit with this. I cannot tell you what we might have.
And again, and I'll take that a step farther for you. I'll say probably mathematically, statistically, you also, as much as you may know, there's a lot of stuff that you and anyone else on your team and on other secret teams in the government don't know about each other too.
Absolutely.
That's how it's set up.
We ran into that all the time.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But the problem is someone needs to be the belly button. That's why when 9/11 happened, remember? Because the CIA had information, FBI had information, DOD had information. Well, it's useless if you don't have somebody coordinating it.
That's right.
That's a problem. So yes, if these other organizations existed, which looks like some did, then there needed to be a single belly button, and there wasn't. And what does that mean? That means that leads to waste of money, an uncoordinated effort, which is, again, what is it? That's a dysfunction of the government. So that needs to be fixed. That's the bureaucracy I was telling you about, the issue with the bureaucracy.
Thank you for watching the video, guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please smash that subscribe button and check out this clip's full podcast episode by clicking here or in the description.